Hello, everybody, and welcome. I'm Peter Goldstein, founder and chief synergy officer at We Did It Health. And today I am truly honored to welcome a doctor, Dr. Minil Patel, who is a bodybuilder and a family physician in London. And before we bring him on, let me tell you a little bit about us in case you're not familiar with our work. Our mission is to help create a vegan, plant-based world to serve everybody's benefit. And our approach is unique. Our approach comes uh, from looking at us as consumers, as ambassadors. We all want to communicate with our friends and loved ones and to help them open their minds and be curious about uh, the plant-based vegan lifestyle. And so the frustration that I experience and so many people are experiencing and that we're looking to do something about is how it is that we show up, we really have the most powerful gift to share with our friends and loved ones, that of health, of animal compassion, and especially reversing climate change. And yet they push us away, they shun from us. And so our mission, our work is to figure out how it is that we can actually engage with them, help them open their minds and their hearts. And to that end, we're bringing lots of different people from across all aspects of the vegan and plant-based communities to see the various aspects of this lifestyle. Our community, we are thrive and inspire to help us all thrive with better health, thrive emotionally, and to be more powerful at inspiring our friends and loved ones who will so greatly benefit from this truth of a plant-based lifestyle. So with that, I'd like to welcome Dr. Minil Patel, who's a family medicine physician in London. He's a graduate of the King's College in London. And among other things, he has studied neuroscience. He is a bodybuilder. He's known for his bodybuilder skills. He was telling me, unfortunately, because of his studies and exams, he had to drop out of competition. But I'm sure he'd be pretty famous as a bodybuilder on stage. But with that, let me bring him on screen here, and please welcome Dr. Minil Patel. Hello there. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
So everybody, please say hello and welcome, and post your comments and questions, and we'll do our best to address them. So, Dr. Patel, tell us about your journey. Tell us how you decided to be plant-based and vegan.
Sure. So obviously I wasn't always vegan and plant-based. I actually grew up pretty much eating everything, the typical omnivorous diet here in the UK. I was actually, my background in terms of my parents were Gujarati, which is a region in India where people are primarily vegetarian. So when I was growing up here in London, I was born in London. The food that I was kind of accustomed was mainly vegetarian food. Obviously, being around other people in the UK, you end up eating meat. So I grew up eating meat outside of the home. And then in university, I started getting into bodybuilding, getting into weightlifting. And the first thing you hear is, to get strong, you need protein. And where are you going to get your protein from? Obviously, meat. So I started eating more and more meat. I think if you told me then that I would be vegan at some point in my life, I would never have believed you. And then in 2017, a couple of things happened. My first kind of light bulb moment, I'll call it, towards going vegan or plant-based was my friends were going to go to an they were going to go to a greyhound racing track, and I didn't want to go. I kind of declined the invitation. I said I don't want to go on ethical grounds because I was against dog racing. And one of them turned around and said, "But don't you eat meat?" And I was like, "Yeah, that's true. I do eat meat." And I kind of thought to myself, I was like, I guess I'm a bit of a hypocrite then, because I'm against kind of dogs being treated badly for the sake of greyhound racing for entertainment. Yet I will happily consume animal flesh taken from animals that have been, put through horrific conditions in factory farms and then slaughtered for their meat. And what's more violent, really, like the dog breeding industry or the kind of animal agriculture industry. At that time, I didn't even think of that. But yeah, it got me thinking. And then a few months later, I went to an animal sanctuary. Actually, an ex-girlfriend of mine took me there to volunteer for the day. She was vegan. I was not, but she knew I loved animals, so we went to the sanctuary to volunteer, and I was just faced with all these animals that were essentially essentially saved from people like me. And I always say that, because of people like me, these animals had to be rescued. And that really, again, got me thinking. But again, I didn't go vegan straight away. But a couple of weeks later, I watched a video on YouTube by Gary Yourofsky. It's called The Greatest Speech You'll Ever Hear. And once I watched that video, that was it for me. Overnight, I decided to just make the decision and went vegan for the animals. So my main reason for being vegan is for animal ethics and animal rights. But I'm plant-based for my health. So I always say I'm vegan for the animals, but I eat plant-based for my health as well. So the more I kind of got to know about nutrition after going vegan, the more I realized that actually a plant-based way of eating is not just the best diet for the animals, but it's actually the best diet for one of the best diets for our health and the best diet for the planet as well. So it's a win-win situation on all counts, really.
Absolutely, and so important for all three reasons, and certainly the environment. We really need to do something about reversing climate change and heal the environment, and that is our topic next month. We're going to be featuring climate health, and we'll talk more about that later. And so please join us next month as we delve into climate health. And of course, this month we're featuring fitness. So back to our topic of fitness, one of the things that I would love for you to talk about is the nutrition for building muscle. So the relationship, the components, the nutrients around building muscle.
Sure. So I think when people think about muscle, they immediately think about protein. But I always say nutrition is a team game. You need kind of all the aspects. So you need your protein, you need your carbohydrates, and you need good healthy fats, and you need a total amount of calories as well. So I'm sure people are familiar. Like, you go to the gym, you lift some weights, and when you lift enough weights and you get tired, you can't lift any more weights. You've kind of reached the kind of limit, and you've reached what we call muscular failure. And training in that way, kind of consistently, and progressing the weight you lift will kind of stimulate the muscle to want to grow. And that's why resistance training is the primary way that your muscles will be stimulated to grow. But then to recover from that and to build the muscle, you need to feed the body adequately and rest adequately as well. And the way we do that is we eat enough protein. So all the studies on vegans, omnivores, everyone, all the studies have shown that you need about 1.6 grams per kilogram of protein, total protein for the day, to adequately build muscle. There's obviously people in the plant-based camp that say that you don't need that much protein, which there's truth. You can get away with eating a bit less, but we're talking about what's optimal. So I always say to people, if your aim is to build as much muscle as possible, you should aim for about 1.6 grams per kilogram body weight per day. And the reason being is every time, when we eat protein, we spike something called muscle protein synthesis. So anytime you eat a meal and the meal has adequate amount of protein, you'll stimulate muscle protein synthesis. And depending on how much protein you ate in the meal as well, will stimulate a certain amount of that muscle protein synthesis. And our bodies are in a consistent flux of building protein and breaking down protein. Our muscles are made of protein as well. So are other structures in the body, obviously, like the bones, the tendons, the ligaments. There's lots of things in the body that are made of this protein. And every time you take a meal in, you're increasing the amount that's synthesized and you're preventing the breakdown as well. So over time, that net increases muscle and then strength, obviously. So it's very important we eat enough protein throughout the day. And then you don't want to try and eat all of that protein in one meal. You want to split it up into separate meals. So I always say 3 to 4 meals throughout the day. So you have these little kind of protein spikes, which spikes the muscle protein synthesis almost like a wave. Because after you've had a meal, it will go back down in a couple of hours. And then when you're ready to eat again, the muscle protein synthesis goes back up. We should probably rewind and talk about what protein is essentially as well. So protein is a long chain of these building blocks called amino acids. I'm sure some people have heard of the term amino acids. And these amino acids are sort of like the bricks, and protein will be like a house. And you put these bricks together and you build a house. There's 20 amino acids that the human body uses. And actually, we can make 11 of these in the body from other amino acids. So we don't actually need these from our diet. We can make them as long as we get enough protein in the diet. So there's 9 essential amino acids which we have to get from our diet. And it's very important that we make sure we get these from the food we eat. And that's why we have to eat enough protein to get these essential amino acids. The reason you might have heard, and people might have heard that, people always say, "Oh, meat is superior to plant protein." I'm sure you've heard that as well, Peter. That everyone thinks meat is superior. The reason they say that is because meat contains all the essential amino acids in the similar amount as to what's required by our body. But that isn't to say that the same isn't true for plants. So certain plant proteins like soy protein, quinoa, potato protein as well, which is, you'd have to get an isolated form, but those types of proteins are also a complete source of plant protein, which means they have all the essential amino acids in the amounts you need. But all the plants that we eat, all plants contain all the 9 essential amino acids. So there's nothing that's lacking. So when people talk about plant protein being incomplete, it's not that the essential amino acid isn't present. It's there, but it's just in a slightly lower amount. Maybe in something like beans would have one of the amino acids would be a bit lower. And if you pair it with another type of food throughout the day, like grains, you'll get that amino acid that's lacking. So provided vegans are eating a varied source of different plants throughout the day, seeds, nuts, legumes, lentils, whole grains, tofu, tempeh from soy, seitan. I'm not sure if you're a fan of seitan, but that's just vital wheat gluten. I don't eat it all the time because it's, either you have to buy it or you have to make it yourself, but it's also a great source of protein. So provided you're doing this throughout the day, you'll get all the protein you need. So it's nonsense when people say that vegans are lacking in protein and it's a protein deficient diet. I don't know any vegans that have suddenly become protein deficient. It's just not seen in the Western world. You have to be really starving yourself to become protein deficient and really eating low protein foods, which I'm sure if you're worried about your health and you're trying to be the healthiest version of you, you're going to be looking and taking care of your diet, and you're not going to be deficient unless you're really starving yourself. So yeah, I think it's really important that people eat the adequate amount of protein to build muscle. If your goal is something like an endurance runner, and you're not trying to be a bodybuilder, not trying to be trying to build as much muscle as possible, you can eat a bit less. I always say aim for about 1.2 grams per kilogram body weight. So I'm working kilograms, not pounds. So if you want to convert that over, 1 kilogram is 2.2 pounds. So you just have to do the math that way. So aiming for about a gram, 1.2 grams per kilogram is what I would say for endurance athletes. Carbohydrates are important as well, and thankfully the vegan diet is abundant in carbohydrates. But you want to make sure you're eating lots of healthy and whole grains, legumes, potatoes, tubers, things that have fiber paired with it as well. You don't want to be getting all your carbohydrates from just sugary beverages and sugar sweetened drinks and processed foods and refined sugars. Those things may be okay as a treat, as a one-off, but really if you're worried about keeping your health optimal and performance optimal and try and build muscle, then focus on these healthy foods as well. And the last one is obviously fats. So getting a good amount of essential fats throughout the day. These can be from seeds, nuts, extra virgin olive oil, flaxseed oil. Getting these polyunsaturated fats is what's going to keep your heart healthy, also provide you with the calories you need to go on and build muscle as well. So a bit of a long answer there to your question, Peter, but yeah, if you're trying to build muscle and optimize the diet, these are the things you need to worry about.
Beautiful. Well, thank you. Thank you for your long answer. It's so much information, and that's really what we're here for, is to get expert information. And so thank you. That was perfect. A couple questions come up for me. Is I've heard it said that really there's no there's nobody who's protein deficient. At least that was framed as in America. In America, nobody's protein deficient unless maybe they're on their deathbed and critically ill. But everybody gets enough protein. But most people, at least in America and probably globally, but most people are fiber deficient. So I think I've seen a number that maybe 60% of Americans are fiber deficient, and I'm not sure what the global numbers would be. But what role does fiber play in muscle building and strength building?
So interestingly, fiber is more about keeping the overall body healthy. So you're right. America, 60% of people aren't getting enough fiber. So ideally, as adults, we should be getting about 30 grams of fiber a day minimum. And I think this on the standard American or the standard Western diet, people get about 15 grams. The same is true for people in the UK. Reason being is because most of our diets, well, most omnivorous and most standard Western diets, I think 80% of the food consumed, at least 60% of the food consumed is from ultra processed foods. And these foods have been stripped of the fiber. They're very low in fiber. Whole food plant-based diet is obviously abundant in fiber because it's whole foods made from plants. And you can only get fiber from plant food. So eating things like beans, lentils, your vegetables, fruits, whole grains, again, all these things are abundant in fiber. And the average vegan probably gets about 50 to 60 grams of fiber a day, no problem. And fiber is incredibly, there's two types of fiber. There's insoluble fiber and soluble fiber. Essentially, these are complex plant carbohydrates, which the body can't digest. So we can't really digest them. But what they do provide is, I guess, roughage for our stools to pass through easily. It makes it easier for stool to pass through our bowels and come out the other end easily. And so it makes it easier for you to go to the loo. Because, everybody poops and we shouldn't be afraid to talk about it. We shouldn't be embarrassed. Everyone does it. And pooping healthily is a part of health. But also the fiber is food for the trillions of gut bacteria that live inside our colon. So if you imagine our gastrointestinal tract or our GI tract, it's a tunnel from our mouth all the way down to our rectum, to our anus, right? And the inside of that tube is essentially exposed to the outside world. Our mouth is exposed to the outside world, but as we go down, the food as well is exposed to the outside world. So along that tube, there'll be bacteria that live there, and the highest concentration of these bacteria are found in the large colon, the large bowel. And it's here where, when you eat fiber, it acts as a sort of food for these gut bacteria. The gut bacteria are able to ferment that fiber, and they produce these healthy compounds, such as butyric acid and short-chain fatty acids, which then feed the cells that line the colon as well, and keep those cells healthy. So your question was about how can eating a good fiber diet be good for, I guess, athletes and bodybuilding. Well, if the aim is to have less inflammation, if the aim is to keep your cholesterol down as well and improve your cardiovascular health, to keep your blood pressure low as well, improve heart health, improve cognitive function, improve your mental health. There's studies out there that link a healthy gut microbiome to all of these things. So whilst we're worried about our physical health and building muscle and all that, we should be looking after our internal health as well, our organs, our mental health, our cardiovascular health, and that comes from doing everything we can to make that happen. And one of the best ways, or what a great way, is to keeping your gut healthy. And the way to do that is feed those gut bacteria with plenty of fiber. Again, no long answer, but I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, that's excellent. Yeah, right. So I'm always advocating certainly for fiber and the importance of fiber, and it's amazing, like you were talking about our gut and our digestive system and our colon. I'm pretty sure that I've seen the information that colon cancer, for example, is very, very directly linked to the food, and probably having the fiber, keeping things moving. To me, as as a non-professional, it just somehow makes sense that if we can keep everything moving through, that would keep our digestive system healthier. Um, on
Just
us, yeah, go ahead.
just making the point because you brought up colon cancer. I think in the UK, according to Cancer Research UK, if you eliminated processed and red meat from the diet, you would drop drop the total number of colon cancer by 5,400. So red and processed meat accounts for 5,400 colon cancer cases per year. That's 5,400 people diagnosed with a cancer, which frankly, the treatment for it can be catastrophic because it requires a removal of the bowel. It's a major operation. Sometimes this cancer can spread to surrounding areas. It's truly a horrific cancer, and I think it's the fourth or fifth biggest killer as well of people in terms of cancer death rates. So we're talking about huge numbers of people that are affected by this, and not only the individual that's affected by the cancer, but think of their loved ones as well. And if you can just make that switch by not eating red and processed meat and increasing your fiber intake, think of the profound impact that could have. This is just the UK. Imagine globally.
Globally, absolutely. Let me share a question we have here. What happened? There we go. All right, let's. Yeah, Marakita asks. So she's asking. She has nephews who are constantly eating processed foods, and I think I know Marakita, and I know how much she would love to inspire them to eat healthy. What tips would you give her? What strategies would you suggest for her to help her nephews eat healthier?
I think with children and adolescents, it comes from their upbringing and how parents model the behavior. So parents, I'm not telling anybody how to be a good mom or dad, right? Parenting is difficult, and at times you'll do anything that will make it easier for you to just be a parent, sometimes, right? Um, but being able to model good health and being able to show children uh, what foods we should be focusing on. I wouldn't punish people for eating processed foods, but we know that with the way the world is and processed food is advertised everywhere, it's readily available. People reach to it easily. It's often cheap as well because people think or perceive that healthy food is more expensive, which it's not if you know the right place to look and if you can cook. So I think it's really comes from how parents stock the kitchen and stock the pantry and what foods they have in the house. And junk food is addictive. Processed foods are addictive, and if it's all you've been eating for years and years, your palate gets used to that. I was the same when I was a child. I was eating lots of processed food because, frankly, I didn't know any better, and my parents were just like, "It's fine, let him have what he wants," which is much of the attitude people have, but they don't realize how damaging that is down the line. Like it all happens in childhood. Like we know that um, childhood obesity is on the rise, and that is then having a knock-on effect to how many adults will be living with obesity in the future. It's I think something in America, something like 50% of the population are already in the obese category, and it's heading towards 80% by 2050. These numbers are scary because we know that overweight and obesity is associated with so many other health problems like cardiovascular disease, strokes, cancers, gallbladder disease. It's high blood pressure. It's a ticking time bomb, and I think unless you intervene early, it's very difficult to get them off it. But I think you have to start, and the way to do that is really to educate them more on the foods they should be focusing on and keeping those foods around in the house, like fruits, especially fruits, because fruits taste great, and if someone was to offer me fruit and cut me up fruit when I was younger, I would definitely eat it. And that would mean that I wouldn't have space to eat all the junk food because I would be eating the fruit. So, getting them slowly to cut out the junk and replacing it with healthy alternatives is the way to go, and make the healthy alternatives be more appealing. I saw a really good one the other day. Someone said instead of having a Snickers, why don't you have dark chocolate paired with a date and a bit of peanut butter? All these are whole foods. Dark chocolate's incredibly healthy. You've got a bit of peanut butter on there, which is a good source of healthy fats, and you've got a date which is full of fiber. It's got sugar in it, but it's got fiber as well, and and what that's going to release, how that's going to impact the body compared to a Snickers bar, which has no fiber, lots of refined sugars, is hugely different. But if you gave a child a snack made of this, they'll probably enjoy it just as much. You just got to find ways of making whole foods more appealing for children, which can be difficult, but not impossible. So I think that's the way to do it. Crowd out the unhealthy stuff by showing them more of the healthy stuff.
I love that, crowding out. That's an amazing concept, and to crowd out and to to replace with healthier, and most likely we don't have to have perfection. Progress and not perfection is sometimes perfection stands in our way, and we think we have to do it perfectly or not do it at all, and that's pretty harmful in itself. So Marakita thinks that maybe if her nephews could see her muscles, that might help. And Marquita, that's a brilliant concept. So there's so many other plant-based and vegan muscle builders that to be able to show a gallery of successful muscle builders and train people and champions in all kinds of sports that are plant-based. I think we probably should look at initiating a project like that. So uh, yes. What are your thoughts on that?
I think again we were talking about role modeling. So having a role
Role
model
model.
is a big thing. So when I first got into veganism, for me it was like looking around. Okay, who are the guys out there that have muscle and are vegan? You know, yeah. At that time, I just saw Nima Delgado, Brian Turner, Derek Simnet, and Patrick Baboumian. I think those are the four that I looked at first. Obviously, Patrick is a strong man. He didn't have the kind of the body I wanted at the time because he was a strong man, but he was strong and he was eating. And he always says like the strongest animals are vegan. You know, oxes, gorillas, elephants, rhinos. You know, obviously we don't have the same digestive tract as them, but I like the imagery that the strongest animals are plant eaters, and having those role models to look up to really made it easier for me to then transition. And obviously I went vegan overnight, so I had to like kind of research and stuff very quickly. But knowing that people had done it, and you know the path is already there, I just need to follow the path. It's much easier than making one yourself.
Beautiful. So yes, so modeling and showing them, and Shelley says yes. I think she really agrees, and 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 look at that picture that she uses
Got more
on
muscles
Facebook.
easily.
Yes. Thank you, Shelley. Look forward to hearing from you too. Um, have all yes, plants have all the protein we need, she says, and absolutely, they do have all the protein we need. And talking about protein, you were mentioning things about different kinds of protein in plants. Now and complete proteins just a few minutes ago, but I noticed hearing that calorie for calorie, black beans and kale has as much protein as beef does. Now, is that how are those proteins different, or is
Yeah.
there really a
Well,
significant difference?
yeah. Well, this is the thing. So like again, I wouldn't use kale as a necessary protein source because a lot of fiber in kale and a lot of the protein that's in kale and broccoli and vegetables is bound up in these plant fibers. So, you know, if you're cooking it down and everything, the absorbability will still be good. It might not be as good as beef, and that's just a fact. And I think vegans have to, you know, as an evidence-based vegan, I have to accept the facts like that. So I won't use kale as my protein source. I use kale for my fiber source, my phytonutrient source. It's got calcium, it's got magnesium, it's got all these other minerals and vitamins, and vitamin C as well. Like it's got everything else I need, vitamin K. That's what I'm eating kale for. But I do obviously eat legumes like black beans and edamame beans, and again the protein in that. The reason they say calorie for you know, by calorie it's got as much protein as or more than steak is because you have to eat a lot of the kale to get the same amount of calories as like 100 grams of steak. So you have to eat a lot of kale to get the same amount of calories that's in the steak, right? And that's why that you end up getting a lot of protein that way. But no one's going to sit there and eat like a whole 2 kilos of kale. It's just not going to happen, right? It's not practical. but yeah, like if you eat a tin of boiled baked beans, or like 2 cups of baked beans, you might get as much protein as steak. But again, it's a lot of fiber. It's very filling. Is someone going to really sit there and do that? Probably not. So I would say you need to eat food that's going to also keep you comfortable. And too much fiber can be quite uncomfortable for some people. Your body has to adapt to being able to eat that much fiber. So you won't want to eat 2 cups of beans every day, like when you've just gone plant based. I would say ease into it. And the type of protein, it's the only difference really is that beans are lacking, or have a lower amount of the amino acid methionine, which, so they have all the 9 essential amino acids, but one of the amino acids is slightly lower, whereas in steak it will be all the same. But I always say the overall package of the black beans and the steak are very different, in the sense that the beans come with fiber, phytonutrients, all these vitamins and minerals, and they're really health promoting. Whereas steak, okay, it's got all your essential amino acids, but what else has it got? It's also got saturated fat. It can increase your risk of colon cancer. It's got heme iron, which we know it can increase cancer risk. It can, when your body digests it, it makes a compound called TMAO, which can increase your cardiovascular risk. So the overall package of the protein we're eating matters more. And I haven't even talked about how, to get steak, you have to forcibly impregnate a cow, take its baby, rear it, keep it locked up in a cage, and then kill it long before its natural lifespan. And it's just so like that whole concept is so unethical. Whereas growing some beans, you're not exactly it's just not the same to compare. So yeah, I would definitely go for the kale and the beans, but I wouldn't just lean on those for my protein sources. I would like to have things like tofu, tempeh, lentil-based pastas, things that have more protein per calorie, and easier to eat.
Beautiful. So lentil-based pasta. So we really that's pretty positive for health. Then is that right?
Yeah. Lentil-based pastas. I mean, the only ingredient is lentil flour, so it's just
Okay.
ground on lentils. So they're like I would call them a minimally processed food, because they're processed to make this pasta, but the ingredient is just basically pure lentil. And they're high in fiber, high in protein, and they're high in complex carbohydrates as well. So if you switch out your wheat pasta for a lentil-based pasta, you'll be increasing your protein intake, and you'll be increasing your fiber intake, and you'll be getting more complex carbohydrates compared to what's found in normal kind of white wheat pasta. So very health promoting.
Perfect. You know what you're a bodybuilder and you're an advocate of training, and let's talk a little more specifically about the average vegan and the average whole food plant-based lifestylist. What are the benefits of training and working out, and how much of it should we be doing? And so talk about the workout aspect of things here.
Yeah, so I mean, I always say exercise is incredibly important, and I think there's a famous quote which is, if exercise was a pill, it would be the best pill for in terms of like solving all of humanity's problems and health problems anyway. And everyone would want to take it, so everybody would want to take it as a pill, just because of the profound effects it has. So everyone should be exercising if they are able to do so. Because it's not just about looking good and all that. The vanity of bodybuilding is completely separate to that. Building muscle means that you're going to be stronger. That's one thing. But also, muscle itself is metabolically active, which means it's actually engaging in processes throughout our body that keeps us healthy. It's the biggest sink for glucose in the body. So when we eat foods and the carbohydrates break down to glucose, the muscle can absorb that glucose and store it in the form of glycogen. And the bigger the muscles you have, the more you can store, which means that getting the glucose out of the blood becomes easier. And we know that having high glucose in the blood chronically is what predisposes people to developing type 2 diabetes. So if you want to avoid type 2 diabetes, or even go into remission from type 2 diabetes, you should be doing resistance training to build the muscles. It makes your body better at handling the sugars in your diet. you know. And the problem that we have right now all over the world, especially in America and the UK, is that people are sedentary. People aren't moving enough. You know, they're not exercising. Some people are not. Very few people are meeting the minimum governmental guidelines on how much we should be exercising. So you ask me how much we should be exercising, and the government says we should be getting about 150 minutes of moderate aerobic training, which is jogging. It could be brisk walking, swimming, cycling, something that gets our heart pumping. It's considered kind of aerobic exercise, and we should be getting about 150 minutes a week. So that's about what,
2.5 hours.
Yeah. It's not a huge amount, but it sounds like a lot. So when you tell someone that, they'll be like, oh, I can't do that. But actually, going from 0 to anything above 0 has a dramatic effect on your health, like positive effect. You know, so just go from 0 to doing 10% more, 20% more. The kind of improvement is almost exponential, and it sort of plateaus off after that 150 minutes, 200 minutes. So the effects you'll get from doing 150 minutes compared to 160 minutes are not as much. 0 to 10. Does that make sense? So just doing a little bit is so much better than doing nothing. In terms of resistance training and muscle building, again, the government says we should be getting about, let's say the government, but the government kind of bases its recommendations on World Health Organization and health associations. So they say we should be getting about 2 sessions a week of resistance training, and these are activities that work our muscles. So where we're actually using our muscles against a force. So this could be weight training. It could be calisthenics, where you're using your body weight. It could be even using resistance bands. It could even be something like a martial art, or even some people say like skipping rope is a form of resistance training as well. So these types of things will help load the muscles and load the bones. And I mentioned muscles already and why getting strong is good. It also, being stronger and having more muscle as we age means that we're less frail. And frailty is another thing that kills people when they get to the age of 70, 80 and onwards. Your muscle naturally will start kind of breaking down as we age. So you kind of hit your peak amount of muscle and bone mass in your late 20s and early 30s. And after that, things start kind of going south. Just naturally, it's part of aging. But there is a way we can mitigate that and slow it down. And so firstly, building as much muscle as we can in our early years is a good idea. But then continuing the resistance training to hold on to the muscle as we age will mean that later on in life we're less frail. We're able to actually do things for ourselves. You know, you might not fall if you've got that much muscle and that balance and that mobility as you get older. And then the other thing I wanted to talk about was with bones as well. When you hit peak bone mass in your late 20s and 30s, and as you get older, the amount of bone mass you have goes down as well. And over time, that increases the risk of developing things like fractures if you were to fall. Resistance training and exercise can slow down this rate of bone mineral density decreasing. Something called osteoporosis. I don't know if you've heard of that term, but it's something that commonly happens in postmenopausal women and the elderly. And it essentially means the bones are quite brittle. But we can mitigate against that by getting enough calcium in our diet, getting vitamin D, and also resistance training. So it's really important that we do these things early on in life, set these good habits, and then carry them on later. And I always tell people it's never too late to start. You know, even if you're in your 70s, it's never too late to start. 70s, 80s, it doesn't matter. If you can get up and walk, you should. If you can run, if you can jog or run, even better. But you should be doing something. And that's the only way we can actually slow down kind of the inevitable decline that's going to happen to our muscles and our bones.
Yes, I like that. It's never too late to start, and I think I'm hearing you also say it's never too early to start. So, getting those habits early on and carrying them through life is really optimal. But it's never too late to start. Can you share any strategies and successes you've had with people maybe at a later age to start doing some physical training and change their lifestyle a little bit?
So personally, I mean, I've not really coached anyone personally, but I know of people that have started later on in life and that kind of have made it a thing they do now. So someone called Jane Thurnell Reed, she's a vegan, and she started weightlifting very late in life, and she's got a fabulous Instagram page actually where she shows some of her training, and you can see that she's progressing and she's doing these exercises and things. In terms of lifestyle changes themselves, I mean, I see people that are in the 60s and 70s, and often they've come to see me because they've got high cholesterol, they're borderline diabetic, and I kind of ask them kind of what their eating patterns like, and then I've got very limited time with them, but I try and see where I can make the changes if possible, and it's often that they're eating something like butter every day and eggs every day, which and they've got high cholesterol, and no one's ever told them that actually if you're eating lots of butter and lots of eggs, the saturated fat from that is what's probably contributing to your cholesterol going up. So having that conversation with them and telling them actually if you switch to a healthy alternative, so make a switch from having eggs to tofu, and you can scramble the tofu, and it's actually going to have a good positive effect on your cholesterol, bring it down. Also with butter, if you switch that to either a spread, or if you can avoid the spread altogether and use something like olive oil. By spread, I mean like a plant spread. So you can get plant spreads, which people will say are very processed and you shouldn't eat them. But compared to butter, they've got much higher polyunsaturated fat content. So if someone's really going to be adamant that they want to keep having a spread on their like toast, then switching them to a different type of spread is what I would normally tell them. And I've had a few people that will make the changes. I think it's very difficult because people are very stuck in their ways, and forming new habits when you're in your 60s and 70s is so difficult. I'm sure you'll agree. But I've had a couple of people that have then come back and said, "Oh yeah, I've cut out the butter. Can we get the cholesterol checked again?" And yeah, I mean, it comes down a bit, but it's by that age, it's so difficult to get it down to the levels you want. And I'm not against starting people on medication if we have to, but it's a step in the right direction for these people, cutting out some certain bad habits. And I do encourage people to keep active as well. So if I ask them if they go for walks, they might tell me, "Oh, I used to go for walks, but then that all stopped during the pandemic." A lot of old people became very scared around COVID time to even go out. But you just kind of have to encourage them to get back into good habits again. And a lot of them do. And especially if you ask them if they've got a pet, often having a companion animal makes it a lot easier to get out of the house. You've got a dog, I can hear him.
Yes.
But often having a companion animal like that makes it much easier for people, especially people who are living on their own, to go out and get some exercise. So yeah, it's I always say it's a work in progress, and I try to do these little things and make the little switches where possible.
Yeah, as you're saying that, I'm thinking how for some people, if they have a dog, they're probably more conscious of getting their dog exercise than getting themselves exercise.
That's the thing; the dog gets them the exercise just by default.
Yeah, right. So that if so they think, well, the dog will benefit from this exercise, and that will motivate them, but I'll benefit from the exercise doesn't necessarily motivate the person to do it. So yeah. Yeah, and that's what this all gets into then is the psychology, is our beliefs, is how we see the world, and of course this the norms, the social, the cultural norms and expectations and behaviors, and I think in a big way that's what we're up against that we did at Dot Health is we're a laboratory to figure these things out, to figure out how can we break down these huge pressures that we have all around, peer pressures as cultural pressures, and really see the truth, because this truth, this plant-based truth is an absolute truth. Just like if I drop a ball, it will fall to the ground. If I eat plant-based, I'll get healthier, I'll save animal suffering, and I'll impact the planet. So it's an absolute truth. And what just totally puzzles me so much is how we have this powerful truth, yet it's so unknown, so unfollowed. So I don't know, I hear different numbers, but I never hear that more than 4 or 5% of the world is vegan, and maybe 1% whole food plant based. And that to me is just amazing, that these truths have been shared. The term vegan has been around over 75 years. The National Health Association here in the United States has been advocating for a plant-based lifestyle for 75 years. So how is it that this has been with us all these years, yet such a tiny percentage of our population is living it? So there has to be some secrets here. There has to be some things we as ambassadors need to do differently so that we can get our friends, our loved ones, the world to take better care of themselves, their health, of the planet, of all the suffering animals. I mean, when I see somebody talking about how much they love their puppy and their kitten and stuff, and yet they're eating hot dogs and meat and drinking milk, it's, to me, this is just really amazing, and we need to do something about it. And I think we are. So with leaders like yourself and so many other amazing professionals, we need to be able to figure this out and do better, inspiring uh, curiosity. And that's our mission, is to get the information, the little snippets of information, get somebody to open their mind and see how they will benefit. It's a huge gift we're trying to give them, and they're resisting us.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think we're up against quite a powerful. I want to say enemies, but systems. It might be a better word, but like definitely capitalism is a huge system that we're kind of up against, because that's money makes the world go around, and to date it's profitable to do what we do to animals, and that's why it works. And the only way we can really attack that is through supply and demand, and by raising the awareness and getting more people to demand for a vegan world, businesses will shift that way. But that's one way. The other thing we're up against is politics. It's become such a culture war and a political war, over the whole kind of climate change, over veganism, um, in the US and in the UK. So and often vegans are thought of as being leftist and looked down on by the right. And I think everyone's just so busy screaming and shouting at each other. The world is kind of burning around us, and the animals and us with it. And only a few of us are kind of pausing to stop.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, and the financial aspect, certainly money is like rocket fuel, and and that rocket fuel will work just as well for people looking to do good as it does for people who are just satisfying their greed or whatever their mission is. So money is neutral in itself, but those who are making money, and those in politics, and those who are propagating the status quo, sooner or later they have to understand that if we're destroying the planet, and if we're coming to a point where Mother Earth is going to invite humanity to leave the planet, I mean, there's no way they can make a profit anymore. So taking care of our home and taking care of the planet is really profitable for them. And that shift in thinking is, looking forward to that coming to the corporate world and the political world.
I think that will happen sometime in the near future, but I'm just hoping it doesn't happen when it's too late. Because I think the people that are in power now are making their money and probably thinking they're not going to see that time come. So live now and laugh and be merry. Whereas the future generations are the ones that are going to suffer. So I think we're quite forward thinking, and we care, and that's why we're having this conversation. That's why we do what we do. Um, you know, we're trying to stop the inevitable, really. And
Yeah.
I guess it needs people that are forward thinking to really do that before it's too late.
Absolutely. Well, we have David who's sharing his appreciation for this episode. Thank you for your kind words, David. Um, David, do you have any questions that you'd like us to address? We have about 10 minutes left here, or anybody else. We'd be happy to try and address your questions and concerns. Um,
I think yeah. So while they're waiting for questions, we could cover just I talked about the macronutrients. We talked about kind of protein, carbs, and fats. But I think as vegans, we need to make sure that we're getting all the other vitamins and minerals. And it's very important that like the only vitamin that I think vegans cannot get from whole food plant based is vitamin B12. And I think it's very important that we as vegans accept that we have to supplement B12. So vitamin B12 is a compound that's made by bacteria actually, and previously we would have got this from foraging and drinking from streams and things. I'm not encouraging anyone to do that now, obviously, um, but then in our kind of in the omnivorous diet, people get it from eating animal products. Um, Funnily enough, farm animals are now supplemented with vitamin B12 because they can't get it from the food that they're being fed, so they have to be supplemented as well. And then we eat their flesh, and then we get it. But so if you cut out the middleman, you can just supplement yourself. So getting a B12 supplement is what I would recommend. You can either get a daily supplement or a weekly supplement, but just make sure you're getting it either from a supplement, and also you can get it in fortified foods as well, like nutritional yeast or plant-based milks, which are fortified with B12. But those tend not to be as reliable because you might not be eating the same thing every day and things. So it's one of those things where I tell everybody just supplement it, and you don't have to worry about it. And the other one, depending on where you live in the world, be vitamin D3. Again, lots of people in the world are deficient in B12, vitamin D3, and iron. Not just vegans. This is omnivores as well. I think it's like 40% of people in America who are, no matter what diet they eat, can be deficient in B12. And iron would be the largest deficiency in the world, especially for women of childbearing age, because obviously every month they have a menstrual bleed. They also lose extra blood that way. So iron deficiency is very common. So it's really important that as vegans, we're aware of where to get different nutrients. So B12 supplement, vitamin D. You can spend 15 minutes in the sun if you're in a nice sunny area. Otherwise, I would say supplement that as well daily to make sure you've got the best chance of having strong, healthy bones. Iron, you don't have to supplement. You can get from food. So dark leafy greens are high in iron. Kale, we mentioned before. Seeds as well. Pumpkin seeds are high in iron. Again, lentils, legumes, even tofu has iron. Whole grains have iron. So as long as you're eating a varied diet throughout the day, you'll get all the iron you need. And iodine is another one that a lot of people can become deficient in. And again, omnivores tend to get it from, I think, dairy, because the way milk is produced, sometimes this iodine metal itself leaches into the milk. And it is found in animal foods because of their eating, and then it assimilates in their tissues. So if you're eating animal flesh, again, you can get it. But again, for vegans, the only kind of natural sources are seaweed. So people that tend to be deficient in iodine live far away from the coast. So humans obviously evolved. If you look back, we evolved in somewhere in Africa, and we were living kind of coastally and near rivers, so we were getting iodine easily in our diet. So obviously, as we've moved out, branched away, it's harder to get that iodine sometimes in our food, depending on the soil that the food is grown in and things. So it's important that you're knowing where to get the iodine from. And it's another one where if you can get seaweed easily or iodized salt easily, then that's an easy way of getting it. Otherwise, that is another one that you can supplement if necessary. But yeah, those are the ones that I would kind of pay attention to. People also mentioned selenium and zinc. Again, anyone can become deficient in these. It's not just vegans. The reason I talk about these is because people tend to point these out to vegans saying your diet is deficient, but truly any diet that's not well planned is going to be deficient. And if I'm trying to tell people to have an optimal diet, what is the optimal diet? I don't think all omnivores are getting an optimal diet, so you need to know where to get these different things. So selenium can be found in Brazil nuts, or even again in whole grains that are grown in selenium-rich soil. But that varies depending on where you live in the world. And the last one I mentioned was, I think it was zinc. So zinc again, found in whole grains, found in legumes, found in seeds are very high in zinc as well, like hemp seeds. So provided you're eating again a varied vegan diet, you'll get all the zinc you need. Yeah. I thought I'd mention that.
Thank you so much. And with that, is there anything that you would recommend that a vegan taking on a training program and even just getting more active, that anything specific that they should maybe pay extra attention to?
In terms of diet or anything like reading
It
material?
is nutrition. Yes,
Nutrition.
nutrition. Yes.
I think again, just eating a varied whole food plant-based diet, making sure you're eating enough protein. So we mentioned between 1.2 to 1.6 grams per kilogram. If you're trying to build muscle, towards the 1.6 grams per kilogram of protein. So focus on having your tofu, soy milk, tempeh, seitan, lentil-based pastas, legumes, all these kind of different sources of plant proteins. So focus on those. Getting enough calories as well, because a vegan diet is very nutrient dense but calorie sparse. So a big bowl of salad is quite filling, but not a lot of calories in there. So a lot of people say when they go vegan, they lose a lot of weight, which is great if your aim is to lose a bit of weight. But if you're trying to build muscle, then you need to make sure you're eating the high calorie vegan foods, like make yourself a burrito bean wrap, or a burrito bowl with like brown rice and lots of beans, avocado. Have your nut butters and nuts and seeds, all these high calorie foods to help make sure you're keeping your calorie intake high enough to build muscle. But yeah, that would be mainly it, really. Focusing on eating a varied diet and just making sure you're eating enough calories.
Beautiful. Well, we have a comment from Claudia, and she says she's late. I guess meaning that later in her life it would be ideal if we were all vegan and plant-based from birth. But she's sharing her appreciation for everything that this community is doing, and that's what we're for. We're here to build community, to support each other, and support each other both to thrive and to inspire, so we can thrive emotionally, thrive physically, thrive with our health, and also to be ready to share that with our friends and loved ones, because it's just so frustrating that we look around people and our nephews and our grandkids and our cousins and everybody else in our lives are so not knowing how much this would serve them, and so not ready in their mindset to embrace it. So figuring out how we can do that is really what we're after. So as a comment, Marquita, and I echo her. She says, hi, Claudia, JJ, and Dave, and certainly everybody who's been here. We really appreciate you. And with that, we had Shelly Shakti comment a little while ago, and she's going to be our special guest actually in 2 weeks. So please come back in 2 weeks and join us again. And all our videos are available on YouTube. We did it, that health channel on YouTube. Please subscribe and watch these videos, and watch the back videos, and comment, and then join us in our community with We Did It, that health. We're in process of launching a community where we can support each other even better, and curate these resources and curate the strategy. So watch for that. We should be launching that in the very near future. And if you haven't done so yet, be sure to subscribe to our newsletter, and to please join us on the scoreboard. So if you go to scoreboard.wedidit.health, we ask a simple one-question survey that says, how has your health improved by changing to a plant-based lifestyle? And our goal with that then is to put it up on a billboard in Times Square, to get to 1 million people, and show the world how a plant-based diet has changed so many lives, and reversed type 2 diabetes, and helped with cancer and heart disease and obesity and everything else. And I've been talking about a billboard in New York actually for a while, even before Mayor Adams was elected. And so now that Mayor Adams, who, if you don't know his story, he's mayor of New York City, and he was type 2 diabetic to the point where, as I understand, he was blind from diabetes, and he changed to a whole food plant-based diet. and within 3 weeks, his eyesight came back, and now he's a huge advocate of healthy meals, and he's doing some incredible things with the hospitals and schools, and advocating for making the changes so that people can have exposure to healthy foods. Um, yeah, so thank you so much for being with us today, Dr. Patel. Looking at a comment by Marakita here. We'll get our plant-based athletes on the billboard. Yes, absolutely, and get them in the gallery. So, Marakita, we've been talking about creating a gallery of success stories, and we're in process of creating one called the Fountain of Youth Gallery, where we're going to show how seniors are thriving on a plant-based diet. The new pharmacy gallery, pharmacy with an F, to show how people have reversed chronic diseases, but certainly a gallery to show athletes, and to be able to show the children and show the world how plant-based athletes are thriving, so that we can start changing some of those cultural beliefs that say, you have to eat meat to be manly and to be strong, and we all know how false those beliefs are. So yes, plant-based athletes as a gallery for sure, and certainly, Dr. Patel, we look forward to having your success story and your story as part of that gallery once we launch it within a couple months here. So we're working on that. With that, I think we're out of time. Any last comments or thoughts that you'd like to share with the audience?
I guess it's just, I guess most of the audience are already vegan, but for anybody that's watching that's not vegan, I think do your research, speak to the right people. Don't be afraid of all the noise and propaganda that you're hearing about vegan diets not being healthy and not being right for the human body. I think there's a lot of noise being created right now, and I think that's the meat and dairy industry trying to fight back against this wave that's coming of people that are compassionate about animal ethics and the planet and their health as well. And if there's so many health professionals out there that are advocating for a vegan diet, and the evidence is now stacking up for it, it can only be a positive thing. So be careful where you do your research, speak to the right people, and yeah, just good luck on your plant-based journey.
Perfect. Thank you. And with that, we look forward to having your favorite resources in our community once we launch that, because part of our vision then is for all ambassadors to be able to do exactly what you've just described. So as we're talking to somebody who doesn't understand it, be able to show them the most relevant information. And part of our work is the psychology of interpersonal communication, so we can get somebody somewhat interested and then start planting those seeds of facts and information, so people can do their research and see the truth that we have here. Well, with that, thank you, everybody, and we're going to call it a wrap. And please check us out on YouTube, and we have well over 200 videos there with lots of experts and leaders in all aspects of the vegan and plant-based world. And I see part of your shirt. What's your shirt say?
I don't know if you read it. Plant power.
Plant powered. Yes, there we go. Those muscles. We wanted to see those muscles. All right. Well, thank you, everybody, and so long, and namaste, vegan. Bye bye.
I like that.
There you go. Bye bye.